I have been told by several trusted sources that this is the best board money can buy in this snapshot of time. Is this true? Well, if you stick around, we'll find out. Welcome to the channel, my name's Gav, and today we're doing a deep dive into the Axis Mako designed by Frank Foilboards. Like with always, please like and subscribe, blah de blah de blah, you know the deal by now. Really helps me out, really helps me grow and make more content like this for you. Before I do get started, I want to do a massive shout out to WSS Boards here in the northern beaches of Sydney. They have very kindly lent me this board and some code foils to do this review. If you want to know more about this board, the different sizes, the prices, or indeed you want to demo one of them, well, I've put a link in the description below to their website, so go and check them out. In fact, when I picked this board up, there was a massive crate of beer next to the counter, so if you play your cards right, you might even get a cheeky tinny if you buy a board. I don't know, don't hold me to that, but I'm hoping to pick one up when I drop this off. So back on to the review itself. Look, there are a few questions that I want answered at the end of this review. So firstly, it's obvious this has got bags of performance. You can see that from the shape, but is it suitable for beginners and intermediates? Secondly, it's obvious that they have designed this with downwinding in mind, but I want to know, does it still perform in the other disciplines, winging and light winds, or indeed power winging, which we all know is going to be the next big thing in 2025. And lastly, which category of downwind board does this sit in? Is this a fast paddler or is this a bouncer? Now, what I mean by that is that the really long, skinny boards are designed to paddle really fast into these big rolling swells, whereas the bouncing boards tend to be a lot shorter and they release from the water really early to get you up on foil. There's a definite divide between the two, and I want to know where this one sits. So let's talk about the dimensions specifically of the board that I've been using. So I was actually bullied into going down a much smaller board than I'm used to. I generally use 115 to 110 litres. That's my sort of go-to at around 7'10". This one is 100 litres, so significantly less, but at 8'2" and 16.5 wide. I was a bit intimidated going to pick this board up, and I thought my first run was going to be a bit of a shit show. But actually, my conclusion from using this is that I have no idea what dims are best suited to me, because I felt this board was perfect. It was stable, it was balanced, I could paddle it up, and then when I was actually on the board, it felt really light. Now, I believe I can get away with a board around 100 litres because of the magic that happens on the underside. You can see from the outline, it's not like other boards on the market. In fact, locally, it's been called the banana board because of its very strange shape. It's got a significant rocker on both the nose and the tail, and this does several things. Firstly, it makes it sit in the water where you stand, which helps stability. It also allows you to release from the water really easily on paddle ups. And then when you are actually up, it prevents the tail from hitting the water, which inevitably makes for falls when you're downwinding. I also want to talk about the distribution of volume because it's all in the middle where you're standing. There's very little in the front and back, which is, to be honest with you, just wasted volume. Again, this has several effects. One being it's incredibly streamlined and aerodynamic. You can pump into wind without the drag of a normal downwind board. But also you have the volume where you need it, which is under your feet. The nose itself looks like a missile, and when a wave inevitably goes over the front of it, it just dissipates instantaneously. It is obvious that hours and hours of R&D have gone into this board to make it as efficient and stable as possible. So onto flat water paddle ups, the first test. Look, this was obviously the first time that I stepped on the board, a little bit hesitant with it being so narrow, but straight away I stood up, I just felt at ease. It was rock solid in the water. And then as soon as I started putting the paddle down, it was obvious how efficient this board is. It was almost as if the water was parting its way and the board was just gliding over the top of it. Now, interestingly, when I do flat water paddle ups, I tend to put the foil really far forward in the box. I was told by several people not to do that and just to put the foil in the middle of the box. And I'm glad I listened to them because it makes a massive difference. The foil tracks are positioned perfectly in the middle of the board, which means I've got a lot of track in front of me and behind if my foil or my preferences change as time goes on. So after the paddle out, it came at no surprise that this board came up easy peasy lemon squeezy. In fact, I would say that this is a crossover between something that paddles really fast and that you can pump out of the water. My preference lies with being able to pump the board out of the water using a slapping technique as opposed to paddling fast. I think that's because I've got poor technique, but this board really does suit that sort of crossover between the two. And then lastly, when I did get up onto foil, I was blown away by how light, responsive and maneuverable this board feels. So supping this in waves, the first thing I noticed was again how stable it was given the turbulent water underfoot. Then turning onto a wave was really easy because of this banana shape. It just allowed me to maneuver the board as I required. And then paddling onto waves, because it's so efficient, again, was next level. It really was ticking boxes with every single maneuver I was doing. I'm definitely noticing that pumping this board is much easier for me. I don't know whether that's because it's much lighter or because of its aerodynamic properties. Either way, I'm finding myself higher on the mast and pumping longer than I'm used to. Now, obviously you can't compare it to a prone board, but it definitely feels like I'm pumping a mid-length as opposed to a downwind board. So on to the main event, which is downwinding in bumps. Look, it comes at no surprise that this thing pops up in next to nothing. In fact, it's as good at popping up in really short, sharp chop as it is in big open swells. And that's a fact that I love about this board. In fact, it takes away my paddle up anxiety, which I still have to this day, and it allows me to use smaller foils or just have the confidence to know that I can come down at any point and I'll be up again in a couple of minutes. Now, obviously the foil you have underfoot and your skill level are going to have a say in that as well, but I definitely think that this is giving me a 10 to 15% increase in my ability to paddle up. Now, obviously there is no tangible evidence for that. I didn't do any statistics on it, but it's definitely the way I feel every time that I get on this board and go to paddle up. I am very confident that it's going to be a success. Now, the other standout feature for me is that how it feels underfoot, which is actually quite surprising given how thick it looks from the side profile. Now, I don't know whether that's because it's super light, because of the cutaway where you actually stand, or the volume distribution, but whatever they've done, there is a magical touch to it and it makes you feel really connected, able to turn and just stay in control the whole time you're downwinding. So for winging and power winging, the advantages this board has translates nicely over. It's super aerodynamic, so when you're going upwind, you don't feel like you've got this big bus under your feet. It pumps really well to get you out of trouble, and the maneuverability allows you to turn onto waves, do tacks and jibes. It really does feel fun and playful for both power winging and winging. I think the main advantage this has over other downwind boards is the fact that it feels so small under feet when you're up and going. The other advantage is because of the shape and the design and the stability, you can get away with a smaller board than you're used to, which means this 100-litre board works nicely in the waves, it works nicely in downwinding and obviously power winging too. Now, like with everything, there are some disadvantages and this board is not exempt. So the first one being that it is a lightweight construction. It even says it on the board that you need to look after this thing. You can't just throw it around and expect it to be, bomb-proof. Now, that being said, this board is a demo board. I know that it's been out for a couple of weeks, maybe even a little bit more. Loads of people have used it, obviously loved it, but there is not a single ding on this thing yet, which is absolutely unbelievable. Secondly is the price point itself. Look, this is probably in the upper echelons of pricing for downwind boards. Yes, you do get a board bag with it, and I have to say that I would definitely pay 200 to 300 bucks Oz to be able to get a board bag that's quality and fits your board perfectly. But even with that in mind, it is an expensive toy. So in conclusion, it goes without saying that I absolutely love this board. I do not want to have to give it back in a few days' time. It has been a real joy to use it. The element I love most about this board is that it gives you pro level performance without the pro level skills required to be able to use something like this. So let's answer some of the questions I set out at the beginning. First of all, the versatility. Look, it goes without saying that this works incredibly well across the board of disciplines. Secondly, could a beginner use a board like this? Maybe it's not specifically for beginners because of the build construction and how high performance it is, but you definitely could learn on it. But maybe I would suggest your second or third board, this would be perfect to get you downwinding and catching those bumps and enjoying the proper ocean swells. And in terms of whether this is a paddle or a pump board, this sits firmly in the middle of both techniques, which is something that I love. Well, there you go. Axis and Frank Foilboards have come up with an absolute blinder with this board. I have no doubt you'll see a lot of people with big smiles on their faces this coming year using one of these bad boys. If you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the water again soon.